Hello, my name is Stephen Kinnison, and like you see, my term paper will be similar to what we've been talking about in this class, technology. But not only just technology, but robots, sort of robotic type things like that, and just intelligent computers. And as we keep advancing in our technology, what sort of issues is that going to bring up? And the biggest issue is us in America losing our jobs. And I guess in the entire world, it's an issue, and it looks like something that we may need to be worried about in the future. So the first thing we need to talk about is how our workforce is portrayed today. And everyone has a similar way of working, I would say, at least in America, it is this way. When you get out of high school, or maybe when you just turn 16, whenever you're old enough to start working, you're pretty much expected to get a job. And if not, when you get out of high school, you need to get a job. Your parents can't give you money forever. So basically, that is the same time that everyone needs to start, getting jobs. And it's not difficult. There's always you hear everyone in high school, they go out and they apply a couple places and they find a little minimum wage job or something that they can, work for just to get some spending money throughout high school, go to the movies with their friends or anything like that. And it's always been fairly easy, at least throughout my life, it's been pretty easy. And those jobs sort of seem disposable. You hear about kids quitting their jobs a lot. You hear about kids having a bunch of different jobs. Me, myself, throughout high school, I had 4 different jobs, which I can't even imagine doing so many jobs now that I'm getting into more serious jobs and more thinking about a career type thing. Which brings us to my hypothesis statement, which brings up the current employment rate, which is at 4.3% as of the May 2017 consensus. I say that as technology continues to advance, as it has so quickly, the rate is going to jump up to 20% in the next 10 years, by 2027. That would be quite a drastic jump in such a short period of time. And the reason I think that is obviously because of technology, and it is becoming quite a big issue. The last time we had a big jump like that in such a short period of time was the Great Depression in the early 30s. One of the biggest tragedies that this country has faced yet. It's still, obviously, in history books, it's still brought up. And a couple years ago, back in the late 2000s, late 2010s, somewhere between 2008 and 2010, there was a big issue. Unemployment shot up just a little bit. And everyone was scared comparing these times to the Great Depression, and it was still well below 10%. And at the Great Depression's highest rate, it was at 24.9% around 1932, in the early 1930s, regardless. And it started at just 3.2% a couple years before that, in 1929. So a drastic jump so quickly, which is quite frightening. Especially because of how big of an issue it was and how many people lost their jobs. And if anything like that were to happen soon, it would be very frightening for a lot of people. What brings us next to is a theory that I read about from Oxford University, saying that 47% of the present jobs in the U.S. could be computerized in the next 10 to 20 years. This is an approximation. This is an absolute guess, but with the way things are going, if that is true, we have an issue. We have a very big issue. Like I said earlier, 24% was the issue that we had, was how high it got in the Great Depression, and this is almost double what we faced then. And that's a lot of people losing jobs, and the world would change. It totally would. A big example is in the early 1990s, mainly 1990 alone, the big 3 companies, GM, Ford, and Chrysler in America, brought in $36 billion in revenue, and hired over 1 million workers, according to Wallach with Business Insider. The big three today, Apple, Facebook, Google, bring in over $1 trillion in revenue, yet they only have 137,000 workers. That is about 900,000 less workers in the same company, and the difference is hundreds of billions of dollars. If things keep going the way that they are, there's going to be no jobs for hardly anyone except for the top 1% and the most skilled and most niche group of people will own their own jobs, or will have their own jobs, which, once again, is definitely proving my hypothesis statement, but it's not proving it completely, for it is just a theory, and we won't know until we get there. But it definitely helps me make a strong point, and that example right there is just a huge, huge example, in my opinion. Another theory I read from Business Insider says, Martin Ford said that the unemployment rate will get all the way up to 75% by the end of the century, which is 83 years from now, which is a long time, but if it just rises a couple percent every year, that is hundreds of thousands and maybe even millions of jobs, which is, once again, a tragedy. And the more intelligent computers that we end up getting, and the smarter they get, could definitely take away, according to Martin Ford here in this article, 7 million business and financial operations jobs. 7 million jobs in just the near future. It also says, there's a quote here, it says that driving done by people will look quaint. It will look like a horse and buggy, which is a frightening thing, just because cars are pretty much our main form of transportation, and it is such a, it's just interesting to think about. It definitely is, and definitely be a different way of living without driving. And if that's gone, what else is gone? That's just the one thing that he brought up. So you wonder, has this already begun? Absolutely. Even fast food places, minimum wage jobs. There's no longer cashiers at some of the higher revenued McDonald's. New York has a couple McDonald's that they already have eliminated about half of their workers. Cashiers, people taking orders, people taking the money, are a big part of their workforce. And without them, that's a lot of people out of jobs with how many McDonald's there are. They really do hold a big number of our jobs in this country. Transportation stations, whether it be train, planes, a lot of people, it's just machines. They pay for their tickets through machines, and they don't need anyone else. Factory workers, China. There's one specific factory in China, I don't have the name right now, that has already replaced over 90% of their workers, and it's actually a very big factory over there. And another one is bridge toll collectors, which isn't that big of a deal all over the place, but certain states really do employ a lot of people collecting money at tolls, and if those are gone, who knows what could be next. So what does this all mean? Like I've mentioned over and over again, it's definitely something scary. It's something that we need to worry about. Everyone needs to be cautious and maybe treat their jobs and not take them for granted as much. But it'll be extremely difficult to put a stop to with the innovation in this country and the way that everyone wants to just keep making a quick buck and keep coming up with the next big thing. Like I mentioned earlier, in 2008, unemployment jumped quite a few percentage points, and it was a big, terrifying thing. I remember that like big, and they compared it to the Great Depression over and over again, and it was a scary thing. So if we end up jumping to 30% or worse, this could be devastating. This would mean a completely new way of life for a lot of people, which is scary. So that's my hypothesis, that in the next 10 years, we will go up to about 20% in unemployment, and I will hopefully prove that throughout my term paper. So thanks for listening, and thank you very much.